This is a Beyond the Badge with Vincent Hill Quick Fix on Radio Influence.
Now, some of you that are my age, 40-something, can remember way back in 1994 in the whole OJ Simpson case and the murder trial where he was charged with the murder of his wife and friend Ron Goldman. Now, last week, the LAPD came out and said that they've had a knife that was recovered by some construction guy way back in like 1998 when the house that OJ was living in was being torn down. He supposedly found this knife, turned it over to an off-duty police officer who, for whatever reason, never turned it in as evidence. And, you know, here it is 20 plus years later, this officer's about to retire, and somehow the knife was mentioned, and I think the retiring police officer had called one of his buddies and said, hey, I need the case number so I can engrave it on the frame that I'm going to put this knife in. So allegedly, supposedly, the LAPD is testing the knife for DNA, blood evidence, and all this other good stuff. But here's the thing, and I am a firm believer that OJ Simpson was responsible for the deaths of Nicole and Ron Goldman. But there are several issues with this whole knife thing. The first being double jeopardy, which means OJ cannot be tried for the same crime twice. So he got away with murder back in 1994 or 95, whenever the trial was over. So here we are 20 years later, 21 years later. This guy says, oh, the knife was here. It had blood on it. Let's test it for DNA. So even if the knife has Nicole Brown's blood on it, or Ron Goldman's blood on it, or OJ's blood on it, OJ is going to sit there and still know that he got away with murder because he can't be tried for it. The only thing recovering DNA from that knife would solve was either did OJ do it or did he not do it? But here is another problem. So this worker found this knife buried somewhere on OJ Simpson's property. Now, if you think back to that trial, one of the biggest things the defense put in everyone's head is that the LAPD planted evidence. So let's take double jeopardy out of the equation for just a second, and let's think about this. If the whole premise of that case was based on race and planted evidence, any half-wit defense attorney would come back and say, well, wait a minute, you searched my client's house the night of the murders. You searched his property because you found the glove outside. Why did you not see fresh digging? Why in the days after the murder did you not see fresh digging where he would have buried the knife? And also, why would my client be crazy enough to bury the knife but leave behind a glove? Oh, I know why, Mr. LAPD racist officer, because you planted the glove there and there was no knife at the scene. And this whole thing is a hoax. This is what the defense would say, because that's what any defense would say, and rightfully so, because here we are 20 plus years later, and this guy, this officer of the law who supposedly had this knife, decided to keep it. So now this officer, his attorney is saying in his statement that the officer did indeed try to turn the knife in way back in 2002 or whenever he came into contact with it. But when he called the station, he was told by supervisors that since OJ Simpson was acquitted of the murders, they don't want to have anything to do with the knife. So he decided to keep it. Now, is that story true? I don't know. I'm not that officer. I'm not those supervisors. But if it is true, it kind of brings bad light back on the LAPD, because there's going to be a lot of people that said, hey, yeah, we understand there's double jeopardy. We understand all this, but 15 plus years ago, you could have at least told us, whether based on DNA, that yes, the murder weapon was recovered from the suspect's house, or no, this is not the murder weapon. So it's going to shed bad light on the LAPD if this officer's claim is true that he attempted to turn the knife in, but he was told since OJ was acquitted, they don't want to have anything to do with it. That doesn't look good. Just like the entire case didn't look good.
Beyond the Badge with Vincent Hill. can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and RadioInfluence.com.